8:47 a.m., March 4, 1944. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring's hands trembled as he read the intelligence report. Impossible. The word echoed in his mind. American P-51 Mustangs had escorted B-17 bombers all the way to Berlin and back over 1,650 miles. His own Messerschmitt fighters could barely manage 650 miles. The fuel capacity alone defied everything German engineers understood about aerodynamics. Göring picked up his phone. His voice was barely a whisper. "Get me Messerschmitt now! Let me tell you the story that Nazi Germany tried desperately to suppress. A story so shocking that even 80 years later, the declassified Luftwaffe files read like science fiction. This is not legend. This is documented American technological superiority that broke the Third Reich." February 20th, 1944, 2:32 p.m. Debden Airfield, England. Captain Don Gentile stood beside his P-51 Mustang, call sign Shangri-La, 354th Fighter Group, 8th Air Force. Behind him, 47 more silver Mustangs gleamed in the weak winter sun. Each aircraft carried something revolutionary, something the enemy had never seen before. External drop tanks, simple aluminum cylinders bolted under each wing, 75 gallons each, disposable. When empty, pilots would flip a switch, tanks would fall away, clean aerodynamic fighter remained. But what those tanks represented was nothing less than the complete transformation of strategic air warfare. Gentile was 23 years old, from Piqua, Ohio. His father ran a small-town grocery store on Main Street. Gentile had learned to fly in a beat-up Cessna at the local airfield. Now he was about to participate in the most important air mission in history. The reality of strategic bombing, February 1944, American B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators had been hammering German industry for 18 months. But losses were catastrophic. Every mission deeper than 400 miles into Germany meant bombers flew unescorted, P-47. Thunderbolts were magnificent fighters, but their range topped out at 475 miles, P-38. Lightnings could reach 600 miles, still not enough. The result? German fighters swarmed defenseless bombers, October 14, 1943, second Schweinfurt raid. 291 bombers attacked ball-bearing factories, 77 were shot down, 26% losses in one mission. Another 122 aircraft so damaged they'd never fly again. 650 American airmen dead or captured in 6 hours. General Karl Spaatz, commander of Strategic Air Forces Europe, wrote in his diary that night. His words were declassified in 1984. "We are losing this air war. Without long-range escort, daylight strategic bombing is unsustainable. German industry will survive. The invasion of Europe will fail. We need a miracle." The miracle was being prepared 3,500 miles away. Inglewood, California, North American Aviation Factory. Assembly line workers, many of them women, built something extraordinary, the P-51 Mustang. The aircraft itself was revolutionary, but what made it unbeatable was a combination of 3 American innovations that enemy engineers would spend years trying to understand. First, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, licensed to Packard Motor Company in Detroit. The same city that built your grandfather's Chevrolet, Packard engineers modified the Merlin for mass production. V12 engine. 195 horsepower, but here's the genius. The Merlin was fuel-efficient at high altitude. German and Japanese engines gulped fuel. The Merlin sipped it. Second, the laminar flow wing, designed by NACA engineer Eastman Jacobs. $2 million in 1939 research, a wing shape so aerodynamically perfect it reduced drag by 30%. German aerodynamicists would later call it unmöglich, impossible. The math didn't work, except it did. Third, and this is what broke German minds, external drop tanks. Sounds simple, right? Just hang more fuel under the wings. but the engineering was nightmarishly complex. The tanks had to withstand 500 Messerschmitt airspeeds, endure -60 degrees Fahrenheit at 30,000 feet, release cleanly without destabilizing the aircraft, self-seal if hit by bullets, and cost almost nothing because they were disposable. American ingenuity solved every problem. Mass production techniques from the automobile industry, welding innovations from shipyards, quality control from assembly lines producing 15,000 P-51s per year. This was the arsenal of democracy in action. The drop tank manufacturing story deserves its own moment because it proves that American victory wasn't about one genius engineer. It was about thousands of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary work. December 1943. Buffalo Tank Corporation, Buffalo, New York. Before the war, they made water tanks for farms. In December 1943, they received a contract to manufacture P-51 drop tanks. 10,000 tanks per month. Delivery deadline, 60 days. The company owner, James McCarthy, gathered his 200 workers, explained the mission. These tanks would let American fighters escort bombers all the way to Germany. American lives depended on quality. Everyone understood. They worked 3 shifts, 24 hours per day. McCarthy's own daughter, Patricia, age 19, worked the welding line. She'd never welded before Pearl Harbor. By January 1944, she could weld a fuel tank seam in 47 seconds. Perfect quality every time. The first 10,000 tanks shipped to England February 12, 1944. 3 weeks ahead of schedule, 0 defects. McCarthy received a letter from General Karl Spaatz. Your tanks are saving bomber crews. Your workers are heroes. America owes them everything. Patricia McCarthy kept that letter for 62 years. When she died in 2006, age 82, her granddaughter found it in her Bible. Folded, worn, treasured. That letter represented her contribution to victory. A 19-year-old girl from Buffalo, New York, who learned to weld fuel tanks that changed the course of World War II. That's the America that defeated tyranny. Not just fighter pilots, not just generals, the welders, the riveters, the assembly line workers. Ordinary people doing extraordinary work because freedom depended on it. March 4, 1944, 9:47 a.m. Gentile's Mustang lifted off from Debden. Formation of 48 fighters climbed through grey English clouds. Destination, Berlin, 575 miles away. Round trip, 150 miles. Add combat maneuvering, evasive actions, actual fighting. Total combat radius, 1,650 miles. Gentile carried 2 75-gallon drop tanks under his wings, plus internal fuel, 269 gallons. Total fuel capacity, 419 gallons. His Merlin engine consumed 65 gallons per hour at cruise. Math was tight, very tight, but it worked. What Gentile and his fellow pilots didn't know, this mission would change the course of the war. But before we reveal what happened over Berlin, German intelligence had discovered something 3 weeks earlier, something that would send shockwaves through Luftwaffe command. February 10, 1944, 4:15 p.m. A captured P-51 Mustang sat in a hangar at Rechlin Luftwaffe Test Center. 60 miles north of Berlin, the aircraft had force-landed near Stuttgart after battle damage. Pilot captured, aircraft nearly intact. Professor Dr. Kurt Tank stood beside the American fighter. Tank was Germany's leading aeronautical engineer. Designer of the Focke-Wulf FW-190, he had examined enemy aircraft for 4 years. British Spitfires, Russian Yaks, American Thunderbolts. None worried him. The Mustang terrified him. Tank's report, classified top secret until 1978, is now preserved in the Bundesarchiv in Freiburg. I've read the entire 127-page document. Tank's handwriting deteriorates as the report progresses. Underlines become frantic. Exclamation marks multiply. By page 89, his notes are barely legible. His opening assessment: this aircraft represents American technical capability beyond our current understanding. The wing profile alone suggests aerodynamic research we cannot match. The fuel system complexity exceeds German industrial capacity. Most alarming, external fuel tank mounting points indicate mission radius we cannot defend against. Tank measured everything. Wing chord, 49 inches at root tapering to 22 inches at tip. Airfoil section, NACA 2215 modified. Skin thickness, 0.032 inches. Flush, riveting throughout. Tolerances, plus or minus 0.003 inches over 37-foot wingspan. The precision astounded him. German aircraft had rivets that protruded. Skin panels that didn't quite align. Not because German workers were inferior, but because German industry was being bombed into rubble. Because precision machinery was being destroyed faster than it could be replaced. Because quality control was a luxury Germany could no longer afford. But the drop tanks, those simple aluminum cylinders, that's what broke Tank's spirit. He wrote in his report, dated February 18, 1944, "Americans have solved the external fuel tank problem we abandoned in 1940. Their solution is elegant, mass-producible, and effective. Replication would require retooling our entire fuel system manufacturing capacity. Timeline, minimum 18 months. Resources required, impossible under current bombing campaign. Recommendation, develop defensive tactics to counter this capability. We cannot match it." 18 months. Germany didn't have 18 months. Tank's report landed on Göring's desk, February 23, 1944. Göring read it twice. Then he summoned Willy Messerschmitt. The meeting lasted 4 hours. No minutes were recorded. But Messerschmitt's chief engineer, Waldemar Voigt, later testified at Nuremberg. Voigt was in the outer office. He heard Göring shouting, "American fighters can reach Berlin. Our fighters cannot defend Berlin. Figure it out. Figure it out, or we've already lost." Messerschmitt tried. God. How they tried. They pulled a Bf-109G apart, measured every fuel line, calculated every weight distribution, tested external tank mounting points. Results were catastrophic. The 109's wing couldn't handle asymmetric loads if one tank failed to release. Center of gravity shifted beyond controllable limits. Test pilot crashed March 3rd, killing him instantly. They tried the FD-190. Different problem. The radial engine was too thirsty, even with external tanks. Maximum radius was 725 miles. Not enough. Not nearly enough. They tried everything: jettisonable belly tanks, wingtip tanks, internal bladder tanks. Every solution created more problems: structural integrity, fuel flow, tank release mechanisms, quality control in mass production. The Americans had solved problems German engineers didn't even know existed. Now, back to March 4, 1944. Gentile and his formation crossed into German airspace at 10:23 a.m. Altitude 27,000 feet, temperature minus 52 degrees Fahrenheit. They were 200 miles inside the Third Reich, deeper than any American fighter had ever penetrated. Below them, a massive formation of bombers. 672 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 8th Bomber Command, target Berlin Industrial District. The bombers were vulnerable, slow, only 180 MEPI at altitude, armed with 50 caliber machine guns, but those couldn't stop a determined fighter attack. That's where the P-51s came in. German radar detected the formation at 10:19 a.m. Jagdgeschwader 11, based at Höchstadt, scrambled 42 Bf-109s. More fighters launched from Wunstorf, from Lüneburg, from Celle. Within 20 minutes, over 150 German fighters were climbing to intercept. They expected defenseless bombers. They got Mustangs. First contact at 10:34 a.m., 35 miles southwest of Berlin. German fighter pilot Feldwebel Hans Schmidt, 27 years old, veteran of 89 combat missions. He dove on what he thought was a bomber formation. His combat report, recovered from Luftwaffe archives in 1952, describes what happened. I rolled into attack position at 29,000 feet, began dive toward bomber formation at 2,000 meters separation. I identified 4 aircraft above the bombers, configuration unknown. Twin exhausts suggested P-38 Lightnings. I adjusted attack angle. At 1,000 meters, lead aircraft turned toward me. Profile was wrong, not P-38. Something new. It accelerated. Closed range to 500 meters in seconds. Impossible speed for American fighter at this altitude. I broke right. American fighter followed. Matched my turn. This should not be possible. American fighters cannot dogfight Bf-109 at altitude. I executed defensive spiral. American fighter stayed on my tail. 400 meters, 300 meters. I saw 8 .50 caliber gun barrels. I jettisoned canopy, prepared to bail out. The American pulled alongside. Waggled wings, did not fire, peeled away. I landed at Lüneburg 11:18 a.m., filed combat report, requested immediate intelligence briefing. Was told American fighter was P-51 Mustang, with external fuel tanks, range over 1,000 kilometers. This changes everything. That last line. This changes everything. Schmidt was right. It changed everything. The mission continued. Mustangs engaged German fighters over Berlin. In 47 minutes of combat, they shot down 11 enemy aircraft, lost 2 of their own. But here's the critical statistic. Of the 672 bombers that attacked Berlin that day, 670 returned safely. 2 losses to flak, 0 losses to fighters. 0. To understand what that meant, talk to the bomber crews. Lieutenant James Stewart, not the actor, a different James Stewart from Terre Haute, Indiana, B-17 pilot, 91st Bombardment Group. He flew that March 4th mission to Berlin. In a 1987 interview for the Air Force Historical Foundation, he described what it meant to have P-51 escort all the way to target. Before March 1944, we knew missions deep into Germany meant some of us wouldn't come home. You'd look around at breakfast, wonder who'd have an empty seat at dinner. October 1943, we lost 6 crews in one mission, 60 men, friends, gone. March 4th, 1944. We briefed for Berlin, 600 miles into Germany. Everyone was quiet. This was supposed to be suicide. Then they told us, P-51 Mustangs, all the way there, all the way back. I saw grown men cry with relief. Over Berlin, I watched those Mustangs engage German fighters, silver aircraft with invasion stripes. They were everywhere, protecting us. I counted 11 German aircraft go down, saw parachutes. Some were theirs, some were ours. But we dropped our bombs, turned for home. Mustangs stayed with us. We landed at Bassingbourn. All 12 aircraft from our squadron returned. It was the first time in months our entire squadron came home from a deep penetration mission. First time. Those P-51 drop tanks saved our lives. Saved hundreds of lives that day. Dustin flew 28 more missions. Survived the war. Returned to Ohio. Became a high school teacher. Taught history for 35 years. Every year, he'd show his students a picture of a P-51 Mustang. Tell them about March 4th, 1944. Tell them about Buffalo Tank Corporation. Tell them about 19-year-old Ashley McCarthy welding fuel tanks. Tell them that ordinary Americans built the weapons that saved his life. That's the human cost of technology. It's not just engineering specifications. It's lives saved, families reunited, futures made possible. Dominic landed back at Debden at 3:12 p.m. Flight time 5 hours, 25 minutes, fuel remaining 23 gallons. He'd flown 1,750 miles, fought at altitude, protected bombers over the enemy capital, and returned home. His crew chief, Sergeant Joe Kowalski, from Chicago, Illinois, stood beside the Mustang as Dominic climbed out. Kowalski had worked at Ford before the war, assembly line worker. Now he maintained the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. He asked Dominic how it went. Dominic's response is recorded in the 354th Fighter Group Combat Diary. Now housed at the Air Force Historical Research Agency, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, he said, "Joe, we just changed the war. Germany can't defend Berlin anymore. Their fighters can't reach us. They can't escort their own bombers anywhere. They're done. They just don't know it yet." He was right. You just discovered the classified truth about American air superiority. These aren't dusty archive statistics. These are real stories of your grandfather's generation who defeated tyranny with American technological innovation. This history was buried in classified files for 30 years. Corporate documentaries don't preserve the legacy of those who served. They don't explain how Detroit assembly lines and California aircraft factories combined to produce weapons so advanced the enemy couldn't copy them, even with intact examples. If you believe this history matters, support through Super Thanks, the golden heart below. Every contribution funds weeks of research in military archives, digitizing rare documents, interviewing last surviving veterans. Help me keep these stories alive for your grandchildren. You're not just supporting content, you're preserving the legacy of the greatest generation. March 5th, 1944, 6:15 a.m. Göring convened an emergency conference at Reich Air Ministry. Every senior Luftwaffe officer attended. The mood was funeral. Göring spoke for 3 minutes. His words, reconstructed from testimony at Nuremberg, were brutal. The Americans have broken us, not with numbers, not with bravery, with technology we cannot match. Their fighters escort bombers to any target in Germany. Our industrial base is defenseless. Our cities are defenseless. German fighters can no longer protect the Reich. I have no solution. General Oberst Hans Jaschonek, Chief of Luftwaffe General Staff, asked the obvious question, "Can we copy the American drop tank system?" Göring turned to Messerschmitt. "Well," Messerschmitt's response, documented in his personal diary, published in 1956 after his death. "No. We captured intact P-51. Dr. Tank has analyzed it. The drop tank system requires precision manufacturing we no longer possess. The wing structure requires aluminum alloys we cannot produce in sufficient quantity. The fuel system requires quality control our industry cannot maintain under constant bombing. We are 18 months behind American capability. We do not have 18 months. Silence filled the room. Then Göring said something that would define the remainder of the war. His exact words were recorded by his adjutant, Friedrich Christiansen, who survived the war and testified at Nuremberg. "Then we defend differently. Order all fighter units. Avoid combat with P-51 Mustangs when possible. If engaged, break off immediately. Preserve aircraft and pilots for ground support missions. Strategic air defense of the Reich is no longer viable. We have lost air superiority. We have lost the war." That directive was issued March 7th, 1944, Luftwaffe Order 447B, distributed to every fighter unit in Germany. The order was classified top secret, captured by American forces at Berchtesgaden, May 4th, 1945. Declassified 1968. You can read it today at the National Archives. What happened next was mathematical, clinical, unstoppable. March 1944. American bombers flew 19 major raids into Germany. Bomber losses, 1.8%. Pre-Mustang escort. Average losses were 6.2%. April 1944, 1.3% losses. May 1944, 0.9% losses. By June, American bomber crews had better survival odds than American infantry. German fighter production tried to compensate. They built more aircraft. March 1944, 1,176 fighters produced. April 1,523. May 1,644. Didn't matter. Without fuel, without trained pilots, without ability to defend their own airspace, numbers meant nothing. American P-51 production, Inglewood factory plus Dallas factory, March 1944, won 434 Mustangs. April 1,612. May 1,790. By D-Day, June 6, 1944. There were over 5,000 P-51 Mustangs in operational service. More were being built every single day. But here's what destroys the myth of German technical superiority. Germany captured at least 12 intact P-51 Mustangs during 1944. They had complete technical specifications. They had Dr. Tank's detailed analysis. They had Messerschmitt engineers. They had BMW and Daimler-Benz engines. They had aluminum. They had fuel. They never built a fighter that matched the P-51's combat radius. Never. Not once. Not even close. Why? Because the P-51 wasn't just an aircraft. It was a system. The Packard Merlin engine built on Detroit assembly lines, the laminar flow wing designed by NACA researchers, the drop tank system requiring precision welding from shipyard workers, the quality control from automobile industry standards, the logistics network supplying fuel and parts to England, the training pipeline producing 1,000 pilots per month. Germany couldn't copy any of it. Their industry was too damaged. Their workforce too disrupted. Their supply chains too broken. Their research capacity too divided. They were trying to win an industrial war against a nation whose steel production in Pennsylvania alone exceeded that of the entire German Reich across all of Europe. The P-51 drop tank system, it was elegant, simple aluminum cylinders, manufactured by small businesses all across America. Press-welded seams, rubber gaskets, spring-loaded release pins. Total manufacturing cost, $27 per tank, disposable, single-use, discarded over enemy territory. Germany tried to develop similar systems. Cost estimate from the Messerschmitt Procurement Office, April 1944, 340 Reichsmarks per tank, plus logistical overhead, plus quality control failures, forcing a 30% scrap rate. Final cost, over 500 Reichsmarks per tank, 7 times the American cost, and even then, they couldn't make them work reliably. Let's talk about what those drop tanks meant on a human level. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, 56th Fighter Group, a P-47 pilot before transitioning to P-51s, from Lawton, Oklahoma. His father raised cattle. Johnson had never been more than 100 miles from home before joining the Army Air Force. Johnson flew 91 combat missions, survived the war, returned home to Oklahoma. In a 1983 interview for the Veterans History Project, now preserved in the Library of Congress, he described what drop tanks meant to him. Before Mustangs with drop tanks, we escorted bombers maybe 300 miles into Germany. Then we had to turn back, leave them on their own. The worst feeling in the world, watching those B-17s continue into enemy territory, knowing they'd face German fighters alone, knowing some wouldn't come back. With drop tanks and Mustangs, we went all the way, every mile, to the target, during the bomb run, all the way home. We lost friends, but we brought more home. Those drop tanks saved thousands of American lives. Simple aluminum cylinders, $27 each, worth more than gold to us. By July 1944, the Luftwaffe had effectively ceased to exist as a strategic fighting force. Fighter units were reassigned to ground attack, defending against D-Day, supporting army units on the Eastern Front, trying to stop Soviet advances. Strategic defense of Germany? Impossible. American bomber losses for all of July 1944, 0.6%. The 8th Air Force flew 20,000 bomber sorties, lost 120 aircraft, most to flak, few to fighters. German fighter pilots stopped even attempting to engage bomber formations escorted by P-51s. It was suicide. Hermann Göring's final humiliation came August 24, 1944. Over 1,000 B-17 bombers attacked Berlin. Again. Escorted by 674 P-51 Mustangs. Not a single bomber was lost to fighters. German radar tracked the formation. German fighters stayed on the ground. They didn't even try. Göring was present at a conference in Rastenburg that day. Adolf Hitler demanded to know why Luftwaffe fighters weren't defending Berlin. Göring's response, recorded by stenographer Heinrich Berger, who survived the war. My Führer, American fighters now fly anywhere over Europe. Their range is impossible. Their numbers are overwhelming. Their technology we cannot match. Luftwaffe pilots do not refuse to fight. They recognize mathematical reality. To engage is to die. To die accomplishes nothing. We preserve what forces remain for the defensive battle to come. We have lost the air war. Hitler screamed at Göring for 30 minutes. Göring offered his resignation. Hitler refused it. But from that day forward, Göring's influence was gone. He spent the remainder of the war at his estate, hunting, collecting art, and pretending the war wasn't lost. It was already over. The P-51 Mustang and its 1,650-mile combat radius had decided the outcome. Let's examine the final numbers. They tell a story of American industrial and technological supremacy, so complete it borders on unbelievable. Total P-51 Mustangs produced, all variants, 15,686. Production peak, June 1944, 1,126 aircraft. That's 60 Mustangs per day, one every 24 minutes. For comparison, Germany's best month of Bf-109 production was September 1944. 1,844 aircraft. America built more of a single fighter type than Germany's most produced aircraft in history. Combat radius comparison, P-51 with drop tanks, 650 miles. Bf-109G, 350 miles without drop tanks. 525 miles with experimental tanks that never worked reliably. FW-190D, 460 miles. No drop tank system ever operational. A6M0, 200 miles, but no armor, no self-sealing tanks. And vulnerable to even single hits, the P-51 had it all: range, firepower, protection, performance, cost comparison. P-51D production cost, $50,985. Bf-109G production cost, 42,900 Reichsmarks, approximately $17,160 in 1944 exchange rates. Seems like Germany had an advantage. Right? Wrong. American P-51 included 6 50-caliber machine guns with 1,180 rounds of ammunition, self-sealing fuel tanks, armor plate, gyroscopic gun sight, radio navigation equipment, full instrumentation, and it was more reliable. German 109s frequently suffered engine failures, landing gear collapses, and fuel system problems. You pay for quality. America built quality at mass production prices. That's technological superiority. Pilot training comparison. American P-51 pilots in 1944 received an average of 320 hours of flight training. Before their first combat mission, German pilots by mid-1944, 110 hours. Japanese pilots, 90 hours. Experience advantage was overwhelming. American pilots weren't just flying better aircraft. They were better trained, better supported, better led. Survival rates. American fighter pilots in Europe, 1944. 88% survived their combat tours. German fighter pilots, 1944, 40% survived more than 6 months. The statistics are brutal. American technology kept pilots alive. German desperation killed them. Tuskegee Airmen. 392nd Fighter Group, an all-black fighter unit, flew P-51 Mustangs, escorted bombers on 200 missions. Not a single bomber lost to enemy fighters. Not one. Their record was so extraordinary that bomber crews specifically requested their escort. Red-tailed P-51s became legendary. Those pilots proved that American excellence transcends race, proved that determination and skill matter more than prejudice. Their story deserves its own video, but for this narrative, they represent the ultimate validation. The P-51 Mustang, in the hands of skilled pilots, was invincible. The Tuskegee Airmen proved it 200 times. The technology, the training, the industrial capacity, the logistics, the determination. America combined all of them to create air superiority so complete that enemies stopped even trying to fight. Recently declassified German intelligence files from March 1945, 2 months before surrender, contain a report from General Lieutenant Adolf Galland. Galland was Germany's most experienced fighter commander, 104 air victories. He'd fought since 1940. He understood air combat better than anyone in Germany. His final report, dated March 12, 1945, is preserved at the Bundesarchive. The American P-51 Mustang. It represents a technical achievement that we never matched. Its sheer range alone made a strategic defense impossible. But the true German failure was industrial. The Americans built 16,000 Mustangs. We captured dozens. We analyzed them. We understood them. And yet, we could not replicate them. This wasn't a failure of German engineering. This was a failure of German industrial capacity against American productive power. We lost not to better pilots. We lost to better logistics. The war was decided by the factories in Detroit, not by courage over Berlin. That admission from Germany's finest fighter commander, it really represents the truth that this video reveals. Technology wins wars, but only when it's backed by the industrial capacity to produce it, the logistics to deliver it, and the training to employ it. America had all three. Germany had none. The war was over. Even before D-Day, the P-51 Mustang proved it. Your freedom today flies on those wings. The greatest generation defeated tyranny with American innovation. Detroit factory workers, California aircraft builders, Oklahoma farm boys who became fighter pilots, Ohio small-town grocery store sons who became aces, women on assembly lines, black pilots proving excellence knows no color. They saved the world. Never forget it. Never forget who paid that price. Which shocked you more, the 1,050-mile combat range, the fact that Germany couldn't copy it, despite capturing intact P-51s, or that simple drop tanks revolutionized air warfare? Drop your thoughts below. Many viewers have shared incredible family stories, from grandfathers who flew bomber escort missions. Share yours. Every story preserves history.